Looking for real stories that lift you up and light a fire inside? Welcome to Inspire and Impact, the podcast where purpose meets perseverance. This is where transformation begins and your story continues.
Welcome to the Inspire and Impact podcast show. I'm your host, Daniel Rosenstein. Today I have the honor of interviewing Jon Triffo. Jon, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. For people who are not familiar with Jon, he's a passionate naturalist, award-winning wildlife photographer, and engaging speaker. You have over 30 years of experience capturing nature's beauty, and Jon brings audiences on a visual journey into the wild. As a sought-after school presenter, he blends powerful storytelling with scientific insight, inspiring both young and adult audiences alike. I'm really excited to have this interview with you today, Jon. I really like nature, maybe not as much as you do, but and especially birds. I thought it's really fascinating that you're into birds. So I'm very excited about this. Is there anything, Jon, you'd like to start off the conversation with today?
I'm an outdoor photographer and naturalist, a bit of an adventure pioneer sort of person. I've been like this for decades, and ever since I was a very small child, I've been interested in going outdoors and discovering the world and nature and the entire universe, in fact, as much and as far as I can.
So what made you decide from this being like a childhood passion into like a career?
I look at the way I live, my interests, they've been with me as far as I remember. I've had a natural approach to every curiosity I come across. I have an inquiring, insatiably questioning mind. Like, what is that? What is this all about? I've been like this as far as I remember. And I have memories in my childhood stretch way, way back before kindergarten. And I remember tiny little insignificant seeming things when I was very, very young. And there were type of things like even small insects and oddities that you come across when you explore the world. A lot of these early questions I've had about nature are still with me. And it's an adventure that just doesn't seem to have an end right now. So I'm happy to go with it.
Well, I think that's so amazing because so many people, they don't even know what they want to do in life. They don't even know what they're passionate about. And the fact that you follow this childhood passion throughout your whole life and made it into a career, I think that's really astonishing and really amazing. So congratulations on being able to figure that out.
Well, thank you.
So I know you're coming out with a book. Is it out yet, the Peregrine Falcons, or is it not out yet?
The book? Did you mention the book? I can show you.
Excellent.
This is Peregrine Falcons in the Concrete Kingdom. It's a small, youthful adventures book, and it's about some of my discoveries while working with the Peregrine Falcon Project on the prairies. And what I was able to do was I was able to participate in releasing young birds off of tall buildings and looking after them as they grew up. They get older, they start growing their real feathers, they start looking out in the world, and eventually they start flying in the real world. And I had to rescue them when they got into trouble. I just loved learning about them. I've learned so much about this bird. I've learned so much that I could confidently say I know very little about them. This is one of the most studied species on the planet, and there's still so much we don't know about them. It's just such a joy and a life-changing sort of way of looking at things. And when you learn about the peregrine falcons, because they're social ecologically dynamic, they're very important to us. If the peregrine falcon has troubles, that's an indication for humans to wake up and say, yeah, we got troubles too. Anything that bothers this species is definitely going to be bothersome to us. And we learned as a species out here in the universe that there are chemicals on this planet, and we keep putting more and more different chemicals. Every year we introduce more and more chemicals. We do not really look after, we do not test these chemicals. We do not pay enough attention to them in the long run. This species showed us what happens when we put a chemical into the environment and we fail to consider the long term. In the early days of learning about DDT, an insecticide that is still in production, still being used quite differently nowadays, but it is still being used in the world. It changes when we put this chemical DDT into our environment. Over a period of time, that chemical changes. It turns into, it becomes different chemicals. It becomes subsidiaries of its former self. And these new versions of DDT are extremely volatile, active in our ecology. It's so active that once it gets into the breeding system of the bird, once it gets into the eggs, the egg shells become very thin, and the behavior of the adults change as well. It was the first alarm that we became aware of was the observation of a female peregrine falcon eating its own eggs on a tall building in Montreal. That was when we had to stop and look at this bird, this species. And we had to start really studying what is going on. And we eventually found that nests were failing, eggs were not hatching. The very fact that the female would sit upon her eggs because the eggshells were so thin, all just to try to incubate these eggs would crush underneath the adult. So we had adults behaving erratically, and we had eggs that could not hatch anymore. This species went into decline, and it was a very drastic type of decline. We almost lost this species, and we quickly had to learn how to stop the poison from acting so much in our ecology, how to recover this species. And my part in this was in the recovery of the species. In the beginning days, our idea of recovery was to hatch babies in captivity and provide them with food and an environment where there was no poison. So we give them the cleanest food we could possibly provide for these birds. We would take their eggs, we would hatch them ourselves in some cases. We would take their babies when they hatched, and we would put the babies in a box on top of buildings, and then even in some cases on tops of cliffs in natural areas, in remote areas. And we would release them in as good numbers as we possibly could in various cities, in various locations throughout North America and throughout the world, in fact. And we were hoping the population would rebound and buy us some time into solving the DDT problem, and also given this species a new chance at existing here with us on Earth. So this is kind of what this introduces. And this little book is basically for young people, but anyone who's young at heart might like this book.
Now, I think a lot of people watching this video, they probably don't know much about peregrine falcons. Can you maybe share a little bit about like what is unique about the peregrine? How are they different compared to other falcons?
Can you repeat the question? I just lost a little bit. I'll need the speaker here.
Yes, I said, like, can you maybe share a little bit about the peregrine falcons? Like, how are they different than other falcons?
Okay. There are many differences. If we're talking from differences between species of hawks, there are many different types of hawks, and the general classes or families of them. Falcons belong in a big group called falcons. There's many different kinds of falcons, and alongside them we have accipiter birds, which are have differences. We have broad-wing sort of soaring hawks, and we have everything from from vultures, I should just say, even into eagles, vultures, um, and even to the owls. We can consider all these types of rapacious birds as raptors. Falcons have very distinctive adaptations and a very distinctive approach to life. They use, they're capable of being highly dynamic, but they conserve energy in very special ways. They're streamlined. They can fly very quickly through the air. They can maneuver in the air, and they can catch prey in the air without exerting too much energy to do so. And they can, they even have special adaptations for flying really fast through the air. They have little, if you look inside their noses, they have little protrusions inside their nostrils, and that helps break up the airflow around their beak. So when they're in a dive going very, very fast, they can continue breathing, even though the air just wants to swoop past the entire bird, in fact. And they have a special notch, we call them like teeth, tomato teeth, on their beaks. When they catch something, they don't want to struggle and fight with the prey. They want to kill that animal very quickly without much of a fight, so they conserve energy that way. Some predaceous animals will engage in long-term combat strategies with their prey, and they'll put on a lot of energy in subduing their prey. Peregrine falcons, they want to catch their prey fast, they want to subdue it very fast, and they want to eat it before some other opportunistic animal might come along and steal their prey. So they have many adaptations for being very efficient, very proficient, and they're very dynamic in everything that they do, but they can still conserve energy a lot. And when you see a peregrine falcon sitting on a building, it generally wants to be left alone. It doesn't really want to engage with other hawks very much. And if another hawk comes by and bothers them, and if they can, they will just try to fly away because they want to conserve energy and yet still maintain a highly dynamic lifestyle.
Wow, it's so interesting. Like I knew very little about this. I do love birds. I didn't know much about peregrine falcons before I met you, so I find it very fascinating. Before I started this podcast with you, I did a little research about them on Google, and it said that the peregrines can fly as fast as like when they're diving, and they go up to 200 miles an hour. I don't know if that's true, but it's very interesting.
It's difficult to point to a specific speed. Some people say 200 kilometers per hour. Some people say 200 miles per hour. And I kind of avoid all that. They're very fast in a dive. I've seen them dive, and they're not only fast, they have a way of watching birds fly. They're very predictive. So they can meet, if they're diving after a very swift pigeon, they can predict where they can meet at a point where they can actually grab that pigeon. They're very good at that too. So it's like they have avionics built into them that suits their lifestyle that way. And but when they're hunting a duck or a pigeon, if they try flying level, wing on wing with a pigeon or a duck, surprisingly, the pigeon and the duck can usually just outpace them, just fly faster than them. But in the dive, nothing really beats them. So they have really beautiful adaptations. It's the design of their wing loading, the design of their body, the way their tail feather comes down in a little bit of a slope. Beautiful design for that type of lifestyle.
Wow, so I'm imagining from what you're saying that they probably prefer to fly higher than the other birds so they can dive down, down on them versus trying to, you said, if it's at the same level. So the probably, I'm imagining the falcons prefer to be higher, right? Higher in altitude. So they probably like to fly really high levels of altitude.
Um, Another thing about the way they hunt is they will try once, maybe twice. They don't engage in pursuit of prey very much at all. If they're onto a pigeon, for example, that cannot fly very well, then they might strike and strike and strike and strike because they know they're going to get that bird and they're going to get a high value food reward for their efforts. But if they're up against a pretty good flying bird, the other thing about, if we think about this ecologically, they're looking for animals that they can catch. And some of the best, most elusive animals, the ones that are really fit, really healthy, going to be difficult to catch, going to be difficult to subdue, they might see that and not even bother trying. So usually the animal that they're picking, it's an animal for, they spot something else, there's something a little bit too slow about it. And sometimes when we examine the prey of a lot of birds that these peregrines catch, we find considerable infestations often of lice, of feather lice and parasites. So some of the prey that they're catching are overloaded with lice, with parasites, some form of parasite, and that's an indication that the animal that they're going after is sick and not 100% in terms of performance.
So you spent many years like documenting the falcons through your photography. Have you ever had like any unique or special encounter with the falcons that really changed like the way you view them, or your interest?
I have to say, just 2 weeks ago, a peregrine chased a group of pigeons right across about. I get to watch peregrine falcons and Cooper's hawks, kestrels, merlins. I've been documenting merlins here for 3 years now, and that's a whole new adventure. A merlin is it's a falcon. It's kind of like a little bit like a miniature version of a peregrine, but I still get amazing encounters with peregrines. I could think of 2 balcony encounters while we've been here. We've been here maybe 20 years now, and I watch birds from the balcony a lot here. And there was a time when the pigeon that peregrine was chasing from the opposite building, the pigeon tried to land on our balconies before we had glass doors here. And I had to slap my hand to keep that, because I don't want pigeons landing on the balcony. So I slapped my hand to get the pigeon away, and the peregrine adjusted and predicted which way that pigeon was going to go, but the peregrine was still unable to catch it. The peregrine turned up at about 30 feet from this balcony. And a couple of weeks ago, a peregrine flew by. It was about 20 feet from the opening of this balcony. So I still get these amazing encounters. But unfortunately for me, it's also fast. I very rarely get pictures of stuff like that. However, I do document wildlife and nature with photography. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures. And I can show you. Many of my thousands of pictures are on this format, the old slide format.
Oh my God.
Of these pictures.
I haven't seen that in many years. Somebody.
Yeah, I got so many of them. And I still got some cameras that can shoot this stuff. And nowadays, I'm using digital technology, of course. And this is a real big, it helps so much. But still, some of the action is so fast. Some people in the old days, back in the 50s when I was born, they were taking pictures of peregrine falcons with cameras like this. You can imagine that. One of my favorite guys in all history is George Harper Hall. And he was an exquisite urban peregrine falcon photographer. He was photographing peregrine falcons on tops of buildings in Montreal, Quebec, with cameras like this and big, large, unfoldable portrait cameras as well.
I mean, are the falcons tough to take photographs? They're always moving around.
When they're flying, they're very tough. I relied on focal lenses that focus by twisting, and I had a very predictive approach of following birds and focusing. I could predict when here. This picture right here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
This picture right here is a picture that is on original Kodachrome slide with an old 180 millimeter Nikon lens, one of my favorite lenses. They're just beautiful lens. And I had the camera on kind of like a gun, and I focus and I pan and focus and I twist that barrel, and wow, you couldn't really even, you just had to let it happen. On a good day, I would get beautiful pictures, flight shots. With that old technology, it's not autofocus at all. It's the old rotate the barrel type lens. They're good lenses, mind you. This technology is different. It takes a whole different approach, and you need a very special lens. This lens, it does catch for me a few pictures, but it's not ideal for photographing anything in flight. So I use this lens, I put it on a tripod, and I use this type of lens to get pictures of birds at great distances. And surprisingly, the camera I use, I don't think I have it with me. It's a very small camera. What I do is I grab quick shots. It's easy to get pictures of birds flying. And what I do is I shoot with the digital settings that maximize what that camera can produce for a picture. Now I put it into my computer, and with the software, I just blow those pictures up, and I get this is a slide film picture, but I can do a similar effect if that bird is way far away. I can get a similar picture. That's the upside down. And one of my favorite pictures is here. That's a young peregrine in a Saskatchewan sunset. And that was done on slide film. And I had pictures of this silhouette blown up. I did not know. I had to scan my slides, and it was just breathtaking. That silhouette of that bird, the way it's flying, it's haloed with a yellow sort of glow. One of the most beautiful pictures, just one of the most adorable pictures of a peregrine. It has such a big, powerful memory. For me, I see that picture. I remember being on that roof. I remember the smell of the air. I remember that sunset. I remember that experience. I remember the thrill of getting up really early in the morning. I'd stay up all night sometimes. When I learned that peregrines were flying at night, I had to take daytime pictures and use Adobe Photoshop to artfully recreate what I saw at night, because I could not get pictures of them flying at night. And sometimes I did, but I had to use a flash, a strobe, and I do really like those pictures. I like the more naturally colored pictures. So I have to use whatever technology now to tell a story. I have to sometimes create pictures from my vast, it's not really a collection, amassment of photographs, and get them digitized. I have to get them rendered, and then I have to figure out a way of telling a story. And sometimes I create pictures, but all the pictures in this book are, there's one picture. I had to play with this picture on a computer. I put the egg in my hand, and when you blow it up, it looks like I'm holding a little peregrine falcon egg. But I had to do that because I had a special presentation. I wanted to tell a special story about an egg on the roof, and so I made this picture like this. But for this book, I don't really blow it up. I keep it small, and I don't really blow up that portion. So, but every other picture in this book is right off of these. I do a little bit of sharpening, a little bit of a color correction, because the slides now, they're kind of changing colors a little bit. So today's technology is perfectly timed for me.
That's amazing. I want to ask you, because on your website, you mention the words dynamic conservation a lot. What does dynamic conservation mean to you?
Dynamic conservation.
Conservation.
I'll tackle dynamic conservation because
Yeah.
My youngest daughter was involved ever since she was very, very tiny in dynamic conservation. She would go around and if she saw any earthworms that needed rescuing, she would rescue earthworms in the rain. I don't know if you've seen earthworms after a rain shower. There's like millions of them. She wanted to rescue them all. And she wanted to rescue everything she found, baby bird out of a nest, all the classic stuff. But one day we were walking on and she started asking me about maple trees, the little seeds from maple trees. And I said, I accidentally told her, well, very few of these seeds are going to grow to trees because they don't land in the right place. I didn't have time to go on the way to get her to school. I didn't have time to explain to her that the seeds that don't germinate, that don't grow to trees, they get recycled in ecology. It's a part of a giant, beautiful natural process. But she got it in her mind that she had to rescue all these trees. There might be millions of earthworms to rescue, but when it comes to tree seeds, there are billions and billions and billions. And this little girl, she wanted to rescue them all. That's dynamic conservation. You're not just, she was hands-on. She'd come home totally covered with mud because she wanted to rescue a butterfly that was in a mud pool. She's just, to this day, she's like that. But right now she's a nurse and she works in an emergency ER room. So she's taking all that dynamic energy and she's literally rescuing human beings. One of the most beautiful stories in the world is the story of my daughters and my wife. Beautiful stories in the world. I have to write a book about them all.
You mentioned earlier about the peregrine falcons almost disappeared. What was the reason they almost disappeared? Because of the chemicals you mentioned, or were there other reasons why those peregrine falcons almost disappeared?
Why did they disappear? They almost disappeared. There were many reasons. Egg collectors were collecting eggs out of wild nests. And we're talking about a remote species. The best way to understand peregrine falcon in terms of recovery and near disappearance and recovery is for every peregrine falcon that is out there hunting somewhere, there has to be a support group of thousands and thousands and thousands of potential prey animals for them to hunt. So really, in school, I remember being taught constantly that predators are regulating the prey species. I look at it the other way around. It's the prey species that regulate the peregrine species. And we have a dynamic example of this on the west coast of North America. There's a subspecies of falcon there that will actually limit its own population once it finds its primary prey species starts to decline for whatever reason. The peregrine will actually stop producing, will limit the amount of egg production. And that's a really great example of prey species having an effect on predator species. So the peregrine falcon is relatively rare, very rare compared to the prey base that it thrives on. And so it's a rare bird to begin with. And once you get people collecting eggs, and once you get habitat interference, habitat destruction, once you get people interfering with the way they live, and not knowing anything about them, they start to decline. And once they decline to a point where it's totally recoverable by nature, a chemical in the environment will totally erase their ability to bounce back, to recover, to self-recover. And I want to tip my hat to the falconers out there in the world. It was falconry that learned how to breed peregrine falcons, how to breed raptors in captivity. And it was falconers that taught us ways of hacking birds, of releasing birds into the wild. It's a whole new type of husbandry. It's like free range husbandry. It's kind of like that. And what we learn from falconers changes the whole game of how we can help recover the species of peregrine falcon. What we learned about the dynamics of poisons, of chemicals in our environment. And once we stopped broadcasting DDT, and once we start being more intelligent about how we're applying it, we have to fight plant disease. We have to fight plant parasites and things that eat plants. We have to feed ourselves. So we have to do it intelligently. And we learned that we can. When the world was threatened with lead in the environment because of lead in gasoline, we stopped putting lead in gasoline. Not entirely, mind you. But that changed everything for us, for all the world. We did a very, very similar thing. We stopped broadcasting DDT and we applied recovery techniques, and we applied an education strategy. It's basically what we're releasing Peregrine Falcons in the city for, is to educate people en masse. Say, this is a Peregrine Falcon. It's really cool. Take a look, and we can all get together and help this group. All these strategies came together. That is a classic story, an important story of dynamic conservation.
How do the Peregrine Falcons adapt so well to cities?
They want. It's a really great. That's a really. I'm amazed you asked that. They wanted to, from the very first notice that they were having troubles. There was arguably an eastern race of Peregrine Falcons that quickly disappeared. I don't know if there's any example of eastern Peregrine Falcon. I don't even know if there's a scientific name for it that's generally accepted. But it's an East Coast bird, and it disappeared rapidly. And we noticed, I say back in the 50s and from the 30s to the 50s, we noticed that Peregrine Falcons were trying to nest in cities. They were literally trying to live with us. And we didn't wake up fast enough. They tried and they failed. But the idea of peregrines nesting on buildings, what George Harper Hall and people like him are concerned about the same things that he was. They decided, now all we need to do to help these peregrine falcons nest in cities is put a wooden tray somewhere on a nice spot on a building and put sand on it, and maybe they'll do their own business or something. That's exactly what they did. So this is actually a box, but if you take the box away and just consider the tray is covered with clean sand. And once we started doing this started happening all by itself. And now there are other things that limited peregrine falcons in cities. It was just a step-by-step progress. The more we understood them, the more we learned about them, the more we could help them. And now we live in a world where many, many, many cities and towns and villages and faraway places have peregrine falcons nesting there. I mean, there's peregrine falcons nesting at the hospital where my daughter works. There's a peregrine falcon nest there. She found a falcon feather just the other day and just sent me a picture of it with her phone. Look, Dad, look what I found. I can't believe I'm living this dream. Because now, it's like my daughter gets to, young people of the world get to appreciate what all that work was for. I began releasing peregrine falcons on buildings in mid-1980s. And gives you an idea how long ago we, as a species, sort of woke up to, we can make a difference. We are making a difference. Let's try to make an intelligently positive difference.
I mean, one of the messages throughout your work seems to be that nature is everywhere, even in the cities. So why do you think some people, they fail to notice that nature is everywhere?
A lot of people do notice. And it's a lot of people are really busy. A lot of people are living very intense lives. Keeping up, catching up. A lot of people literally cannot afford to stop and notice So they have to get out and do and do and do and do and get up the next day or the next night, and they got to get out and do and do and do and do. And so it's not like people are callous or unthinking. When I go to schools and do a presentation, I discover that everybody is really fascinated by what they learn, and they want to learn more. And most of these people, they genuinely grow up and they remember. Yeah, these people, they came to class, they remember things, and they notice. And as the generations, as I grow older, I'm 70, maybe 71, and I still meet people who remember me, and they remember what they learned when they were with me. And people want to learn. We just need to keep encouraging ourselves to get out, explore nature, appreciate nature. If enough of us get on board and appreciate nature, my approach to everything is we're not going to want to protect or take care of anything that we don't appreciate and we have no knowledge of. So education is likely the biggest, greatest key of all. You take that key of education, and that's the way to do it. Because people do appreciate nature. They just don't have room for it in their lives like they used to.
So you've been like doing photography for many years. How has like photography like taught you about patience?
Patience?
Yeah,
Well,
like
you're
how does
talking to the right guy about patience. I have none. I have no patience. I'm the most impatient guy. Oh, it's terrible. And when I'm outdoors, everything bothers me. It's too windy. Oh, it's not windy enough. It's too hot. Oh, it's too cold. Yeah, there's always too many bugs. Oh, there's not enough bugs. You know, I am the most difficult person to be with, to be with myself. And I'm always complaining. I'm the world's greatest complainer. And I have no patience at all. But it takes a fierce amount of self-control to get the pictures that I've been getting. And as I'm interested in. It's amazing you said that, because as I get older, I get more and more impatient. So I got to bring myself back and say, I'm gonna have to use the tripod. My old style photography, I had I had 3 cameras. One of them was on a big gun. I had to stop using that because it was dangerous for me. People literally thought it was a weapon of war. It was a camera on a stock. And so I had to stop using that. But I remember thinking, if I get old enough and I still want to take pictures, I'm gonna have to start using the tripod. Those days are here. It's so difficult I think I have a dozen tripods now. When I go out, you very rarely ever see me with one, unless I go to an event, a people event. It was a lot of fun. I literally have to use a tripod for them. But even then, I try to get away with it, without using tripods.
What's been like the most difficult nature photograph you ever had to take?
Oh my goodness. I can't think of a single one right now. I can the most difficult one I could not take was I was in a field in Calgary's beautiful Fish Creek Provincial Park, Calgary, Alberta, and back then I had to take a picture, crank the film, and I usually tried to save the last 2 pictures on my film for something special. At the end of the day, nothing special happening. I got to go home. I have to take pictures of something just to end that roll, because that film was very expensive. And wouldn't you know, one day I had 2 pictures left. There's a baby great horned owl on a tree. I got a million pictures of those, but that's cool. I took 2 pictures, and just as the sun started going down, I had to go home. A type of a bird called a harrier, a marsh hawk, started swooping me. And we had a lot of history together, me and this bird. It never saw me, it would come and swoop me. It was wonderful. It dive ball me, try to get out of my territory type thing. And as it was doing that, it swept away, and a coyote came running up the field, and it was in tall grass, and it was standing on its hind hunches trying to see me above the grass. And the marsh hawk was dive bombing the coyote, trying to get in all the way. I had no film in my camera. That was the most difficult, excruciating thing, because all I could do was sit and watch, because it went back and forth, and the coyote started jumping up in the air, trying to grab the bird out of the air. You're such an annoyance. I tried to grab it. It just went on back and forth and back and forth. But the coyote wanted to know what I was doing. And the thing about nature is when a coyote is watching you, well, now you have to be careful. What is it? A big coyote? It could be a dangerous situation for you. But out there, they were really small and timid animals, but they were watching me, following me. If I found a nest or something, then it would eat everything that I found. So I had to be really careful because I was always being watched.
So what advice will you give to somebody who wants to start becoming a nature photographer such as yourself? Is there any advice who somebody wants to start out? Like how can they get started? Or
the best advice I could give is when I started learning photography, I learned all by myself. I bought one book, and the author's name is Carl, Carl Shipman. Ship as in ship on the sea, man as in man. So Carl Shipman, I think it was Understanding Basic Photography. One book. It was amazing. I promised myself, I'm divergent. I have difficulty reading. And I promised myself that I'm going to read every word in this book, whether I need to or not. And I'm going to read everything until I understand it. That's what exactly I forced myself to read that book. Best thing I ever did. I finally got cameras that I can control aperture and shutter speed. And I approached the camera knowing a little bit about it. And I realized if I want to do anything really cool with any camera I have, I need to understand that camera. So anybody who wants to begin, get yourself a camera, get yourself the manual of the camera, get yourself a book about the camera. I would recommend focus on books that only focus on how to operate the camera. Focus on operating cameras very first. Don't worry about anybody's vision of photography. That can all come later. And hopefully you will develop your own vision of photography of what you want to do with it. If you don't know, if you're not comfortable with getting the best that any camera, I'll show you a camera. I could pick this thing up and I can maximize this camera's ability to produce photography for me. It's a very simple, very old camera, but it has some wonderful features. The more I understand this camera, the better I will be at getting pictures with this camera. So I think one of the greatest photographers in the world, I'll think of his name, he was asked about what type of camera he likes. And he said he can create anybody with a pinhole, a box with a hole in it. Anybody with that, it's called a pinhole camera. Not even a lens, just a little pinhole in it. Anybody with that, with knowledge, you can create beautiful photography with a box that only has a hole in it. So I took that approach, and that was Ansel Adams who said that you can do wonderful things with a box with a hole in the box hole camera. So that's my approach. Start with the camera, start with the equipment, learn the film, everything else is gonna come your way. Guaranteed.
excellent. That's really great advice. What role do you think schools play in creating the future conservationists?
Woo. I've worked with two basic types of schools. The school that I went to when I was a kid, go to a big building, sit in classrooms. It's a typical school. And the other type of school I work with are homeschool. In both scenarios, homeschooling and regular schooling, there is a lot of schools that are adopting highly dynamic ecological education as part of their curriculum. And a lot of them are just going hands-on, they're letting the kids touch nature, learn about nature, get out and explore it. It's just the most beautiful thing. When I was in school, we didn't get to do that. We had to sit in these hard wooden seats. And on a hot day, it was just terrible. But I was fortunate. I had teachers who were brilliant storytellers. And that is basically what got me through my education. I'm so happy. I'd say 99% of every teacher I ever met, I was just a wonderful, wonderful human being with a gift for storytelling. And I think that's what sort of happened to me. I became a storyteller to carry on that sort of inspiration.
You spent a lot of time in wildlife, watching animals and stuff like that. What life lessons did animals teach you about being human?
It's a beautiful question. You're gonna make me cry. That's a beautiful question. It goes deep because there was a time in my life I couldn't be with people, and I was so far into the wild, I had no plans of coming back. And as dire as that was, it was one wildlife adventure after another, and I couldn't stop myself. I said, I want to know what these animals are doing. What is going on here? It could have been plants. It could have been insects. It could have been anything. It could have been the way the sun came up. I want to know. It could have been the way. I remember a night when Jupiter came up. And it's just giant experiences in my life. I remember a night when the only shadow on my path in the forest one night, it was literally the light of Jupiter, created a shadow that I could see. And I started studying owls at night, to develop my night vision. The more I learned about nature, the more I learned about wildlife, the more I learned about me. And I started taking an interest in that. I said, wow, I'm kind of an interesting guy. And I'm part of an interesting group of this thing called humanity. And it's a big wake up for me. It's a long, long, difficult process. It took years for me to wake up to that. And now I was like, oh man, I've been out there with 180, I think my max group was 186 children showing them wildlife in a wild field full of flowers and bugs and birds. And I said, wow, there was a time I could never do this. And there it was. I was doing it. I was doing it on a daily basis. I was meeting and greeting. I was meeting and greeting all kinds of people with all kinds of animals in my hands. I was meeting them out in the wild. I've worked with captive animals, farm animals. I've worked on wild game farm zoos. And I've worked with just in your face wildlife, because when you're out there and wildlife's in your face, it's because you're out there. And that's the other thing I should mention. And when you're working with wildlife, I have so many really bad injuries working with animals. I have injuries I wake up to every day. It's pain. And but I don't regret any of it. The thing is, everybody needs to know. When you're out there and there's animals, be careful, please. Just, you never know, never take anything for granted, because you never know what a wild animal's going to do.
So if somebody read your book about falcons and took, an action after reading your book, what would you hope that action will be?
An action?
Yeah, what action do you think people should take after reading your book?
Right. I didn't bring one. I have a pair of binoculars. Very, very tiny. Because the older I get, the less I want to carry. And I have a dent in my shoulder from carrying a bag here. So it was actually, I might have to get my shoulder operated on. So carrying light things, start early. Trust me, don't. If you can lighten your backpack, do it. I take very small binoculars and take a modest camera. Try to be with groups as much as you can. And also, I met some people who were viciously attacked, being by themselves, enjoying nature, by animals and by humans. before I get lost on that, because I just mentioning that I have time trip. So please take every caution, every care, be very thoughtful, think things through, plan things through. But by all means, get out there and enjoy and enjoy and enjoy. And just the more you see, the more you're going to want to see. The more you learn, wow, the more you're going to want to learn. It's just like that old saying: the more you learn, there is more to learn. It is so profound.
So, Jon, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we end our conversation for today? Any final words?
The beauty of nature and wildlife, it's you just mentioned the key word. It's share. Share your experiences and let everybody you meet share their experiences. Sharing is a way of making the world a truly, truly more wonderful place. I know this. I went out there, didn't want to come back. And now it's like, I don't even want to go out there too far anymore because it is really dangerous. But the sharing aspect, just share everything, share yourself, share with others. And the more you learn, the more you're going to have to share with each other. That's my advice for the world.
Well, Jon, thank you so much for coming on our podcast and sharing all about your experiences and about the Peregrine Falcons and about the wildlife. I learned so much from listening to you. I really appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. Thank you.